Kurt, I'm gonna read from two texts, one science and one spiritual. Um, they're about two so totally separate topics, but science and religion say the same thing. Uh, um, and to prove that we are the energy that's neither created nor destroyed, I'm gonna read Heisenberg first. Heisenberg is talking about Greek philosophers and how lots of them hinted at what modern physics hints at, even though they didn't even have the scientific method. Um, so, yeah, I'll read from this. It's just a passage. In the philosophy of Heraclitus, or Clitus, I don't know how to say his name, Euphyses, the concept of becoming occupies the foremost place. He regarded that which moves the fire as the basic element. The difficulty to reconcile the idea of one fundamental principle with the infinite variety of phenomena is solved for him by recognizing that the strife of the opposites is really a kind of harmony. For Heraclitus, the world is at once one and many. It is just the opposite tension of the opposites that constitutes the unity of the one. He says we must know that war is common to all and strife is justice, and that all things come into being and pass away through strife. Looking back to the development of Greek philosophy up to this point, one realizes that it has been born from the beginning to this stage by the tension between the one and the many. For our senses, the world consists of an infinite variety of things and events, colors, and sounds, but in order to understand it, we have to introduce some kind of order, and order to means to recognize. I don't know what that sentence is saying. What is equal? It means some sort of unity. From this springs the belief that there is one fundamental principle, and at the same time the difficulty to derive from it the infinite variety of things. That there should be a material cause for all things was a natural starting point, since the world consists of matter. But when one carried out the idea of fundamental unity to the extreme, one came to the infinite and eternal undifferentiated being, which, whether material or not, cannot in itself explain the infinite variety of things. This leads to the antithesis of being and becoming, and finally to the solution of Heraclitus, that the change itself is the fundamental principle, the imperishable change that renovates the world, as the poets have called it, but the change in itself is not a material cause, and therefore is represented in the philosophy of Heraclitus by the fire as the basic element, which is both matter and a moving force. We may remark at this point that modern physics is in some way extremely near to the doctrines of Heraclitus. If we replace the word fire by the word energy, we can almost repeat his statements word for word from our modern point of view. Energy is in fact the substance from which all elementary particles, all atoms, and therefore all things are made, and energy is that which moves. Energy is a substance since its total amount does not change, and the elementary particles can actually be made from this substance, as is seen in many experiments on the creation of elementary particles. Energy can be changed into motion, into heat, into light, and into tension. Energy may be called the fundamental cause for all change in the world, but this comparison of Greek philosophy with the idea of modern science will be discussed later. Well, when he discusses it later, I might read again. Anyway, that's what Heisenberg said. So, even the quantum physicists are spiritual. This is The Wisdom of No Escape by Pema Chodron. This is a lot about meditative practice, in particular Tolkien, Tolglin, I don't know how to say it, I'm gonna butcher it. The essence of let's let's Google it. How to say
Yeah, the book is called Tonglen
Tolgon.
by Pema Chodron. So, invested. Konstantin Melnikov.
Tolgon. We're gonna go with Tolgon because this white man just said it. I don't know if that's the proper way to go about this, but that's what we're going with. Tolgon. It's Tonglen. The essence of Tolgon practice is that on the in breath, you are willing to feel pain. You're willing to acknowledge the suffering of the world from this day onward. You're going to cultivate your bravery and willingness to feel that part of the human condition. You breathe in so that you can really understand what the Buddha meant when he said that the first noble truth of life is suffering. What does this mean? With every in breath, you try to find out by acknowledging the truth of suffering, not as a mistake you made, not as a punishment, but as part of the human condition. With every in breath, you explore the discomfort of the human condition, which can be acknowledged and celebrated and not run away from. Tolgon puts it right on the line. The essence of the out breath is the other part of the human condition. With every out breath, you open, you connect with the feeling of joy, well-being, satisfaction, tender-heartedness, everything that feels fresh and clean, wholesome and good. That's the aspect of the human condition that we wish were the whole show, the part that if we could finally clear up all of our problems, we would have as our everyday diet. The menu would read only happiness, no pain here. There would be all the things that you think would bring you everlasting happiness, maybe a little bittersweetness, a few tears, but definitely no heavy-duty confusion, no dark places, no closet doors that you don't want to open, no monsters under the bed, no ugly thoughts, no rage, no despair, no jealousy, definitely not. That's the out-breath, the part you like. You connect with that and you breathe it out so that it spreads and can be experienced by everyone. All that you need in order to do Tolgon is to have experienced suffering and to have experienced happiness. Even if you've had only 1 second of suffering in your life, even if you've only had 1 second of happiness, those are the prerequisites. In other words, you are an ordinary human being with pain and pleasure, just like everyone else. However, if you were just like everyone else, you would breathe in the good part and breathe out the bad part. Sometimes that makes a certain amount of sense, but this path, the path of the warrior, is a lot more daring. You're cultivating a fearless heart, a heart that doesn't close down in any circumstance. It is always totally open, so that you could be touched by anything. So yeah, lots of people do that. They just forget the suffering, or they try to block out the suffering and not feel it, and inundate themselves with entertainment and all of these things to pretend like they aren't suffering. They don't want anyone to tell them that they're suffering, because then that would be admitting to that from which they cannot escape. But then instead, the suffering always comes out, and it comes out in rage porn. People griping and complaining and screaming at each other. I thought it was funny. Margaret Atwood, or however you say her name, the person who made the show where women are raped and made to have babies because of a fertility crisis, midwife something. I don't know. That's not the name. It's something where they wear bonnets on their heads. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're never gonna get it. But I follow her on Twitter because she's actually a poet, and she's a very good poet. And if you want to read one of her poems, I really suggest you look up All Bread. It's one of my favorite poems by her. And I guess someone tweeted at her, just so you know, I hated all of the books I had to read by you in high school. And she quoted the tweet and was like, well, thank you for sharing that with me. I really needed that in my day. And then she was like, you probably just couldn't understand the words that I was saying, but okay. Um, I, I think it's really funny because people that can't do art because they're afraid to create, really bash the people who aren't afraid. And that's the jealousy and the strife that comes out. Instead of admitting you're jealous, you just scream and take it out on the person who's just being themselves. Anyway, I don't really know. Do what you will. All I'm saying is that if you can admit that you're suffering and maybe you aren't perfect and maybe you've made some mistakes, but that's okay because that's just a part of life, then you can learn to love and grow from that experience in a positive way. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Everybody gets that way. Sometimes I'm in a jam. I think I got a plan. I don't know the rest of the words, but I really tried. And that's all I got to do is try and try and try so I can do it right one of these times. When I'm not doing too well, boom, 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 boom. I don't get hard on myself. Nobody's perfect. I gotta work it again and again till I get it right. Nobody's perfect. You live and you learn it. And everybody fucks up sometimes. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. No, no. Nobody's perfect. That was a really great rendition, Kurt. I think Miley Cyrus should sing it that way and make it a ringtone so that I can make it my ringtone. Anyway, have a wonderful day. This is just some reading I was doing and decided to share. I'm reading 60 books in parallel. Not all at the same time, but one day I'll finish. It's in parallel because they're all open on the ground. Just some are taking threads and others aren't. Until I get bored and give up a thread. Anyway, have a wonderful day. Bye.